That seems to be.
Hey, gentlemen, I'm going to start the learning sponsors as the rest of the crew come in. Okay, that's learning sponsorships. A Year of Learning, Friends of Herb Jeremiah, Svi Ben Zev, Friends of Sam Coleman, Shmuel Ben Yaakov, Friends of Gideon Lazinski, Mordechai Shlomo Ben Meir, Bella and David Adler, in memory of her father, Eliyahu Ben Yosef Kohen. Those who were inspired by our Rebbetzin Emerita, Sheila Shapiro, Sarah Estamalka, Bat Meshulam Yisachar, Gail and Leslie Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Mushka Sprinza Bat Yosef Chaim Bachava, Chanan Ben Moshe Eliezer Vachana, Pesha Bat Shmuel Yitzchak Halevi Vitzipora, Isser Ben Yoel Moshe HaKohen Vachana. Rexford Friends of Gladys Sherman, Gutta Bat Meir, Michael Klein and Friends of Judah Klein, Yehuda Tzvi Ben Chaim, Marsha Brana, in memory of her husband, Harav Yerachmiel Ben Shmuel. Friends and family of Arthur Ritholtz, Mordechai Yudel Ben Baruch Leib HaKohen. Friends and family of Siggy Bessler, Shalom Shraga Ben Dov. Friends of Marvin Weinstein, Mordechai Ozer Ben Yisrael Aharon. Sarah Alpert, in memory of her husband, Harav Tzvi Lipa Ben Hillel. A Month of Learning by Carol and Josh Sanborn, in memory of her father, Yehoshua Shia Ben Moshe Yehuda HaKohen. Ike and Evelyn Blachor, Hakarat HaTov, for his continuing recovery from recent surgery. Rabbi Dr. Yankee and Malki Honig, in memory of his mother, Rabbanit Hensha Ita Bat Chaim Yehuda. Hannah and David Grunblatt, in memory of her mother, Roisa Bas Chaim. Jill and Perry Meltzer, in memory of her father, Yaakov Ben Yosef. B. Pizer, in memory of her stepfather, Avram Michal Ben Shmuel Halevi. B. Pizer, again, in memory of her mother, Rezel Bat Shammai. Jerry and Sharon Glassman, in memory of his mother, Malka Yehudis Bat Eliyahu. Henry Katz and children, in memory of his wife, Leila Leah Mincha Bat Yehuda. Mel and Haran Haller, in memory of his mother, Fega Bat Yaakov. A Week of Learning by Andrew and Stephanie Becker, in memory of his sister, Yocheved Bat Ze'ev. There are no individual days of learning for today. And Shemas Havnalia, Crank Rafia, Velti Yeshir Shematlia, Oben Israel Good Kabench, yeah. Okay. I will gather momentarily and start. Okay. All right, we're going to begin with the Mishnah. Am I correct? All right, on the bottom of 108B, if you got article B3, B4. All right. Okay. All right. All right. Yes, we did. Okay. All right. Okay, so remember we had a long discussion in regards to the relationship between the shomer and payment of fines or monies. We saw quickly that the Gemara made it clear that an individual could not be tried for two different sums, the wachomish and the kefel, at the same time. But on the other hand, it's very possible that an individual could be, based on what the situation was of what they vowed, and if they vowed and then denied the vow, okay, or if there were witnesses involved in trying to show that they had lied on the situation, that it's very possible that a person could be expected to pay more than one chomish at a time or more than one kefil at a time. Okay? So we saw all of that. So I believe then, okay, that, right? So as we get to our new material, okay, we're going to see there's a number of similar discussions. Right? Everybody have the place? Okay. So we said it is, okay, Kafchet Amud Beis, and if you said what? An art scroll about 108 before. Okay. Matnitin, Hechan Piktoni is the question. Where is my deposit? Okay. Amarlo, he said, Abad, it's got lost. Okay. Mashbiachani. Okay. Right. So he makes him take a vow. I want you to take a vow. Right. Va'amar amen. And as we've said before, amen is a shortened form to acknowledge that they're actually accepting and taking the vow. Okay. Okay. All right. So what happens? And the witnesses come under those circumstances, and they claim no, that the person had consumed it. What happens? Mishalem kerem. He must pay the principal amount. Right? And the Mishnah goes on, Hoda'at ba'atzmo, but were it such that he had indicated that, admitted, okay, that he had taken it, he consumed it, etc. What must he pay? Mishalem keren v'chomesh v'asham. He must pay all three, commit to all three items, paying the principal, paying the 1/5, and bringing the asham offering. Okay. All right. So again, the Mishnah continues with another scenario. Echan piktoni, where is my deposit? Amarlo nignav. This time said that it was stolen. Okay, mashbiachani. I force him to take an oath. Va'amar amen. And again, person says the shortened form acknowledging an oath. Va'idim idimo tosha genavo. And this time witnesses again come and they claim that he's the one who stole it. Okay, what happens? Mishalem tashlumei kefel. Here again, clearly must pay the double amount. Okay, Hodame atzmo, and the Mishnah then follows same format. If he himself had admitted the situation, Mishalem keren chomesh va'asham. Okay, then again he would pay this case the principal, the 1/5, and the bring the asham offering. Okay, so okay, the pasukim are different, but notice the fact is that the result of admitting is what I believe that the Mishnah is trying to emphasize here. Not only in the amount of what would have to be paid, but brought or things like that. Okay? Now the Mishnah continues. Okay? Hagozel et aviv, a person who steals from his father. Okay, vinish balo. Okay, and he takes an oath. He did not steal. Umate, and the father dies. Okay. Reizem mishalem keren v'chomesh v'asham lebanav o la'achiv. Okay, he must pay. Okay, the keren, the principal, the chomesh, the 5th, and bring an asham, and he does so to his sons, the sons of what? His
father's other son.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's la'achiv.
Oh, it's the father's brother. If he's an only child.
Okay, that's the question. I had a couple of different pshat in there. Okay, all right. One pshat said, as you said. Okay, one suggests that it was to his sons that he can't be, or to his uncles. To his uncles.
That can't be. That's the concept is he must return that which he stole.
Right.
Even if he is the owner of it now, because he stole it.
He stole
his
it.
father died. Now he owns it. He's the only child. So he must
That's-
return it to his father's
That's-
living
yes.
brother.
Yeah, that's if you're saying he's the only child. That's why I
But
said there were
if he's not the only
the
child, he
child
returns it to his sibling.
to his. That's what I said.
Where it
To
goes
his-
to his own children.
Okay. Well, that's the right. That's the shot that you have. I said I had multiple shots in. Okay. All right. Okay. Ve'ime no rotzeh o she'ein lo, and if he chooses not to, or that he doesn't have, right? Lo ve, okay, lo ubale chov ba'in v'nifra'in. Okay, and if therefore it goes on, and the Mishnah says here, okay, that he makes it alone, and those who come who are creditors come and they demand payment. Okay. Okay.
He's not allowed to keep that money. But let's say he has one other brother and he's the older brother, so he would theoretically get 2/3, but he can't.
He can't because it's stolen.
So if he borrows money, the
creditors come and get it. They get it. They come. They collect the money from what would have been his inheritance. That's the point. Okay. Ha'omer livno, one who says to his son, okay, konem I ata nene mishali. If the father had said during his lifetime and makes a vow, okay, konem, remember we're going to, this nadarim for making an oath like a korban. You do not benefit from anything of mine. Mate, okay, if the father dies, okay, what happens? Rashenu, he inherits no longer his father's property, okay? He does inherit because the property no longer belongs to the father in that situation. If, however, he made such a vow, okay, that you're not going to benefit from me as we go to the top of the next Amud. Okay, what happens? In other words, the vowed no benefit, regardless of life or death. Imate lo yirashenu. In that case, he will not inherit him. V'yachzir levanav o levachiv. Okay, and therefore, what part of that inheritance would have been his, and instead would go to either his brothers, okay, or to his sons. Okay. Father's right. In other words, if he's not a child, it goes to his brothers. That's the point. Okay, or it goes to his sons. He does not get. V'im ein lo. Okay, so in other words, the point again being, if he has no others, laveh, if it was a borrow, ubalei chov ba'im v'nifra'im. Okay, then those creditors come and they take it from the amount of money that he would have been the heir of. Okay, Gemara. Amar Rav Yosef, says Rav Yosef. Afilu la'arnaki shel tzedakah. It can even go to the community charity situation, collection. Amar Rav Papa. Now Rav Papa wants to raise another statement. Utzrich shiomar ze gezel avi. That when he returns it or gives the money to the creditors, things like that, he must make it clear that this was the money stolen from his father. Amai, why is that the case? Nimchale l'nafshe. So the Gemara raised the question, why can't he forgive the debt to himself in this situation? Okay, Milo Tznan, because haven't we been taught elsewhere in another Mishnah, machal lo al hakeren, velo machal lo al hachomesh. If one forgives him on the principal, but doesn't forgive him on the 1/5, right? Alma bar mechilahu. This would seem to imply, therefore, that it's possible for a person to forgive the debt for himself. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yochanan here. What happens? Lo kasha. Okay, it's not a problem. Ha, Rabbi Yossi HaGalili. In one case, we have the view of Rabbi Yossi HaGalili. Ha, Rabbi Akiva. In another case, we have the view of Rabbi Akiva in a machloket. Okay, so part of it here may depend on whether the son is the sole heir or not. The Tanya, as we say now, okay, according to a Braita, the following. Okay, ve'im ein leish goel, okay, lahashiv ha'asham. We're going to see that Rabbi Yossi is basically saying that a person is able to forgive himself. Okay, v'chiyesh adam b'Yisrael she'ein lo go'alim. Okay, according to the pasuk, we're saying if the person doesn't have, I use the word, a redeemer, a close relative, lahashiv ha'asham. Okay, and is there any individual that asks the Gemara, that does not have such a redeemer, as opposed to what we're going to see that Rabbi Akiva is going to tell us that he's not able to forgive himself. Ella begezel hager hakatuv medaber. So that Mishnah they're suggesting, says the Gemara, is that it's robbery that's taken from a convert. Okay? Harei shegazal hager v'nishbalo. If someone stole money or property from a convert and then took a false vow, v'shema shemet hager. Why? Perhaps because the convert died. Vayama ale kaspo v'ashamo Yerushalayim. And therefore the person who took that money comes and brings wants to do tshuva and brings his asham to Jerusalem. And what happens? Upaga ba'oto hager. And he meets that convert there, okay, in Jerusalem. Okay, and what happened? Zekafo alav malveh. But the Geir, okay, what did he do? He established that amount of money as a loan to the robber, okay? And then after that situation, the convert dies. Zacha hala b'masha biyado. Then the robber, okay, basically acquires, okay, that which he that he has in his property. Okay, divrei Rabbi Yossi HaGalili. Okay, those are the words of Rabbi Yossi HaGalili. So Rabbi Yossi HaGalili is using that example to show his argument that one is able to forgive oneself. Okay? Rabbi Akiva Omer. However, Rabbi Akiva disagrees and says, Ein lo takana achiyotzi gzelo mitachat yado. According to Rabbi Akiva, there is no remedy until he removes the stolen money from his own property, domain, property. Okay, right? So, well, that might be a situation.
There are no relatives. Yeah.
No, it say it might go to charity. Okay, right? So what happens? Where else could it go? Okay.
Has no relative.
Right. So there is no person that he can directly return it to.
It's a charity to be Messiah.
No, the Gemara is suggesting that could be the avenue that he takes.
Say that you could get any Jews for all related to.
Okay. That's part of the issue of the argument. Since there is no, the point being, okay, that Rabbi Yossi HaGalili's argument is that since there is no one else to give it to, he could forgive himself. In Rabbi Akiva's argument, if there's no one else, then his suggestion would be to give it to charity. That's the difference. Okay? Okay. So what happens? So let's go on. Ein lo takana ad shiotzi gzelo mitachat yado. He must dispose of the money somehow. So Rabbi Akiva's argument is going to be the place where it would need to go is charity. Okay? So there's a little difference there. Okay? LaRabbi Yossi Aglili, lo shana lenafshe, lo shana la'acherim. For Rabbi Yossi Haglili, there is no difference whether the debt is the amount of money is forgiven by himself or it's done by others. Matzi machil. The result is that it becomes forgiven. Okay, that's what happens. Ula Rabbi Akiva lo shana la'acherim v'lo shana lenafshe. But for Rabbi Akiva, there's no difference if it's forgiven by others or if it's forgiven by himself. Lo matze machil. The amount of money then that is not forgiven. V'la Rabbi Yossi, hu hadin da'afilu lo zekafo b'malva. But for Rabbi Yossi, okay, it seems logical to say that even if the money was not established as a loan, okay, in the case, v'hai katani, and that's why our Mishnah there teaches zikafo alav b'malveh, okay, that the ger at the time established it as a loan, lahodiacha kocho de Rabbi Akiva, to be able to show you the strength of the argument of Rabbi Akiva. Okay, that's why I wanted us to understand that it was Rabbi Akiva's view quite different from Rabbi Yossi. Not only is he arguing, okay, the fact that it's not forgiven, okay, otherwise, but that the issue of where could it go? Okay, the afilu zakfan alav b'malveh, that even if it had been established as a loan, ein lo takana ad shiotzi gzela mitachat yado, that there is no remedy for him until he totally disassociates himself with that money. Okay? All right. Now, okay, Rav Sheshet is going to challenge that interpretation of the Braita with the following. Mat kifla Rav Sheshet. So Rav Sheshet challenges with the following. I hachi la Rabbi Yossi Haglili. If that's the view of Rabbi Yossi Haglili, l'shma'inan lenavshe. Let us teach it then in terms of himself. V'chol shekein la'acherin. Okay? Not only should the debt be able to be forgiven by himself, but also by others. The Rabbi Akiva, and according to the view of Rabbi Akiva, l'shma'inan la'acherim delo matze machim. And therefore it shows us the strength of Rabbi Akiva's argument again by teaching us that even being forgiven by others doesn't work, okay, in that situation. V'chol shekain, and how much more so l'nafshe, even to himself that he can't forgive, okay, the debt to himself. Delo matze machil, that there in that situation it cannot be forgiven. Ela amar Rav Sheshet, but rather Rav Sheshet argues as follows. Havaha Rabbi Yossi Haglili. In both cases, I will suggest that the Braita can be identified with Rabbi Yossi Haglili. Ki ka'amar Rabbi Yossi Haglili, because when Rabbi Yossi Haglili says this, the matzi machil achirim, that he's saying it's being forgiven by others. Aval lenafshe lo matze machil, but for the individual himself, okay, to forgive it, that's not, according to Rav Sheshet, what Rabbi Yossi Haglili is suggesting. Okay, Ella amai zacha hala b'masha biyado, but rather under what circumstances is it, okay, that individual can, I'll use the word benefit, okay, from what he has acquired. Mishum dezakfan alav b'malveh. Why? Because under the circumstances that it was established as a loan for him. Rav Amma. Okay, so Rav is now going to go into this argument, and he's going to disagree with Rav Sheshet. Okay, Rav Amma Hava Ha Rabbi Akiva. No, I'm going to say, says Rava, that both elements reflect the view of Rabbi Akiva. Ki Amar Rabbi Akiva Delo Matzi Machil. Okay, that when Rabbi Akiva is saying that there is no forgiveness in this situation, lenafshe, for him, for the person himself, okay, to be able to do it, right? Aval acherim matzi machil, but for others, it's possible for him for it to be forgiven. Okay? Why? As we go over to the top of the new Amud, Miklal, okay, by inference, the Rabbi Yossi Galili Savar, Afilu Lenafshe Nami Matzil Machil. Are we saying this is based on the fact that Rabbi Yossi Galili is of the opinion that for the individual himself, he is able to forgive the debt? Ella, what? But, says the Gemara in another explanation, Gazal Hager, okay, that money that was stolen from the convert, the Ka'amar Rachmana Natina Kohanim, because that, okay, actually should be given to the Kohanim. Okay? Heichi Mishkachadla. What's the situation that we find here? Amar Rava. So Rava is suggesting something else, by the way, other than the money going to tzedakah, for example. Hacha b'mai askinen, what are we talking about? Keshegazal et hager, that one stole money from a convert, v'nishba lo, and took a false oath under such situations, umeit hager, and the convert that died, v'hoda la'achar mita, and he acknowledged, okay, the fact that he had lied after the death of the convert. The ba'idna the ode, okay, that at the occasion, at the time that he admitted, kina'o Hashem v'natnu lekohanim, that actually it was acquired by Hashem, okay, and therefore should be given to the kohanim. So now we go on with a new item. By Ravina, okay? Since the going to cite a pasuk in a moment, okay? He's going to ask in regards to the question of the gender of the person from whom the item was stolen, okay? By Ravina. So Ravina asks, Gazal Hagioret, okay? It was stolen from money was stolen from a female convert. Mahu, what's the situation? I'm going to fill in. After all, our pasuk uses the word ish in the citing the pasuk. Amar Rachmana v'lo isha. Okay, citing man and not citing woman. O Dilma orche dekrahu, or are we simply talking about the broad language, the everyday use of language, meaning person, as opposed to a specific gender there? Okay? Amar le Rav Aharon le Ravina. So Rav Aharon says to responds to Ravina, Tashma, listen to the following braita. Tanya ish, that where it teaches the word, uses the word ish, okay? Ainli ela ish. Normally, I would only say it applies to male in this case. Isha minayin. How, on what basis could I still use that pasuk to tell me that it could include a woman who was the subject of the robbery? Keshahu omer ha mushav, right? Hare kan shnayim. Okay? Because if we look at the pasuk and we read the pasuk, it sort of gives two examples of the idea of returning. Okay? So what happens? Im kain, ma talmud lomar ish. Okay? Why then does the pasuk specifically use the word man in this case? Ish ata tzarich lachzor acharav im yesh lo goalim im lav. If it's a man, okay, it implies that one must, in terms of returning the stolen object, one must go after, okay, the individual to see if they have any kinsmen, any children, so on and so forth. Right, exactly. Katan, but were he to be a minor, okay, in other words, we're the person to have converted as a minor, okay, in that situation, and therefore, okay, that's a different scenario. I atatzarich lachzor acharav biyadua she'ein lo goalim, because had he converted, okay, after, while a minor, in that situation, it's probably sure that he has no kinsman, no family whatsoever. Okay? Tanu Rabbanan. So now we get to a new Braita. Okay? Lashem la Kohen. Remember, we're still dealing with that pasuk in Bamidbar chapter 5, verse, I think, 8 it is. Right? Okay. Kina'o Hashem, v'natno la Kohen shaba'oto mishmar. It would seem to imply, okay, that in that situation, not only has Hashem acquired that item, okay, in a sense, the money, but it must be given to a specific Kohen, namely the one, okay, who would be, I'm going to call it on duty at the time, okay, and would be the one who, because he's on duty, he's the one who's directly involved in the dealing with the Asham offering of the person. Okay? So what happens? Okay? Ata omer lekohen sheba'oto mishmar. Do you say, based on the pasuk, that it really refers to that specific kohen who's on duty? In other words, based on whatever the cycle is in the service in the mizbeah. Or eno ela lechol kohen sheyirtzeh. Or maybe he could give it to whoever kohen that he chooses. Keshehu omer, because when the pasuk says as follows, Milvad el hakipurim asher yechaper bo alav, okay, citing that pasuk, Hare lekohen sheba'oto mishmar hakatuv medaber. There it's very clear, okay, that it's talking about the kohen who's specifically, so to speak, on duty at that time. Okay? Tanu Rabbanan. And therefore we have another Braita. Hare Shahaya Gozel Kohen. Let's say that the thief himself was a Kohen. Okay? In this situation. Okay? Minayan Shalo Yomar. On what basis do we say, Ho'il v'yotzei lekohanim, that this item, okay, should go to Kohanim? V'harehu tachat yadi. Okay, so in other words, he could say, hey, even though I stole it, since the pasuk says it has to go to Kohen, it's rightfully mine. Okay? Right? Yehei shali, it should be mine. He says, v'dinhu. And while this may seem logical, okay, I bashel acherim hu zoche, bashel atzmo lo kol shekein. Namely, that if it's bashel acherim, that if it would belong to other kohanim, okay, and they would merit it, they would benefit from it. Bashel atzmo lo kol shekein. Certainly, then I should benefit from it and get it. However, what happens? Rabbi Natan Omer, he says as follows, Rabbi Natan, B'lashon acher. Okay, or maybe it was said in slightly different language. Uma davar she'en lo chelek bo ad she'ikanes b'shuto. What about the situation? Says that it doesn't really become appropriate or associated with him until it actually enters his domain, his responsibility. Okay, Kasheyikanes l'shuto. That's when it becomes his. Okay, the asham, for example, doesn't become the property of the Kohen till the bringer of the offering, in this case the robber, actually makes a transition, giving it over to him to perform the korban. Eino yechol lahotzio miyado. Then he's not able to remove it from his control. Davar sheyesh lo chelik bo ad shelo yikanes birshuto. Okay, until it enters the property responsibility, I'll use that term momentarily, of the Kohen. Mishenichnas lerishuto, once it enters his responsibility, his domain, eino din de ein acher yachol lahotzio miyado. Is it then not reasonable to say that no one else, in other words, no other Kohen, okay, could take it from his hand, from his responsibility? No, says the Gemara, explaining further Rabbi Nassan's view. Im amarta b'davar she'en lo chelek bo. If you're saying it's something that he really doesn't have a portion, a right to it, shekashem she'en lo chelek bo, kach ein la'acherim chelek bo. That we would argue that the same way, okay, as the thief, he really doesn't have a portion, any rights to it. So likewise, we might say that others don't have a portion or right to it. Tomar begeza, you're going to say then regarding the stolen material, shekashem sheyesh lo chelek bo, kach yesh la'acherim chelek bo. Okay, the same way you're going to argue that he has a portion, a right to it, so therefore others should have a right to it? Ella, rather, this is our point. Gzelo yotzei mitachet yado umitchalek lechol achiv hakohani. Rather, that money, okay, let's assume it's money for the moment, that was stolen, okay, must be removed, I'll say, from his, okay, and distributed among the others. Okay, right, right, right. Okay, that's the only reason I raised the question on the tzedakah. All right, vaktiv, but isn't it written v'ish et kedoshav lo yihiyu? That, in other words, implying from the pasuk that person, implying on duty, the Kohen, should get his portion of the offering, right? It would seem to make us think there's no need for him to share with other Kohanim, based on the pasuk. Hacha b'may yaskina. What then are we talking about? The Kohen tameh. We're suggesting that he is a Kohen who should not be in service at that time because of impurity. Iba Kohen tameh. If we're then talking about a Kohen who's tameh, davar sheyesh lo chelek bo, does he then even have, under such circumstances, any portion of the offering or any portion of the money? Certainly. Mi itle, who has it then? Ela acha lekohen, miste achuza. But rather we use a gezerah shava here. Again, as we saw in previous case, from lekohen, for the kohen. For the kohen, made from the example of ste achuza, to Tanya. Why? Because there, a Braita tells us, achuzato, okay, his, let's say, portion amount. Ma Talmud Lomar. What does it mean then when it says, minyan l'ste hayotzah the kohen biyavel v'ga'ala echad min hakohanim? Okay, that it goes out. This portion of land goes out to the kohanim during the yovel, and it can be redeemed by one of them. Minayan shelo yomar. Why isn't it that it shouldn't say Ho'il v'yotzei the Kohanim b'yovel v'harei he tachat yadai? That he could argue that it should be under my hand. In other words, I should get it and keep it, right? Tahei shali, and therefore it should be mine. Vidinhu, and this does seem in a way logical. B'shel acherim ani zocher, if as a Kohen I would benefit and gain from others, b'shel atzmi lo kol shekain, but and from my own, shouldn't I likewise, even more so, be able to benefit? Talmud Loma. So, however, the text tells us to stay acherim kohen tiyeh achuzato. That in that situation, okay, the the land is considered. I want to say. I, Okay, that would be one translation. I wanted to just phrase it a little differently. The land is not considered viable for him to take possession of it because that it is inherited elsewhere. Achuzah shelo, right? The kohen tiyeh achuzato, achuzah shelo, ve'en zo shelo. Okay, right? It's the inheritance of the one who should get it and not his. HaKetzad yotz'a mitachet yado umitchaleket l'chol achiv hakohanim. Okay, that it leaves his possible possession and it's divided up to the other Kohanim. And I think that might be a good place to stop right there. Okay.